Hello! Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. I'm Adam Weinrib, joined as always by fan-sided MLB insider Robert Murray, and we are waiting for the trade deadline to wake up, so thankfully Jeff Passan and ESPN gave us a long list of bombs to drop in the conversation. His top 50 trade deadline candidates dropped yesterday. We've got plenty of connections to discuss. I want to get Robert Murray's insight on a number of names, some of whom we knew would be involved, but the percentage of their possible trades was way higher in Passan's estimation than I thought. Some of whom I hadn't heard before. Some connections make all the sense in the world and are finally getting brought to light. Plus, another key injury may have pushed someone on the stellar bubble closer to joining that fray, or maybe not. That's why we have Robert Murray on the podcast to talk me through the things that are floating around my head. Robert, how you doing, dude?
I am doing great. It is Wednesday. Happy hump day, everybody. It is good to be here. We have plenty of trade rumors to discuss. There is a lot going on. There are conversations being had behind the scenes. I'm anxious to dive into it. I say we do it right away. Although at some point during the show today, I want to address what ended up happening at the White Sox game yesterday. That we can maybe, I don't know if we want to start off on that note or end it on that note, but at some point I think we gotta discuss that. But Adam Weinrib, how are you?
I'm good. Yeah, let's end it with a final commentary there, because as people who've watched this podcast know, sometimes I get a little too emotional, and not just when I'm talking about Red Sox prospects and Red Sox fans. But yeah, Zach, the June swoon is not ending for the Yankees. I regret to inform you it is still June, so perhaps in July the swoon will end, but not before the end of June. Much needed off day tomorrow. Plenty of serious things for us to talk about, and obviously connections to be drawn in the Passan column. Some of the things that people have been taking away from that column are already popping up in the comments, so I know you folks are well-tuned trade deadline experts. We're going to break all of it down. You can join Robert in a private Q&A, 3 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow in the Discord. So why aren't you in the Discord? Why aren't you a member yet of the Baseball Insiders podcast? There's no better time. You can also subscribe to the Moonshot, our weekly baseball email newsletter, where the fan-sided MLB team, including Robert Murray, break down all the biggest stories of the big leagues with humor, insight, behind-the-scenes info. You can read all that and more on fansided.com/baseball-insiders too. But if you want to bother Robert and I between shows, we do 2 shows a week. As we're approaching the trade deadline, we'll expand that to 3. We'll be back on Fridays. Not quite yet. We will update you when that comes. But for now, if you have questions between today's show and Monday's show, the only place to get them answered by Robert is in the Discord. So join up there. Wow, the Oklahoma City dynasty. Haven't touched on that yet, so I got to gather my thoughts, figure out where I stand on that. I don't know if you know, but they've got so many draft picks and their core is so young. So they're actually really well positioned for the future. That's an insight I just came up with. I'm the only person who thinks that. So this is exclusive content for this pod. Look, we have so much to get to. I don't want to waste it with trolling. That's not true. I definitely want to waste it with trolling, but we'll troll between the conversations that we have to have. And probably worth starting with Alex Bregman, just because I know that this is a player who at this point makes all the sense in the world for an extension in Boston, especially after the trade of Rafael Devers. And the comments there was a report yesterday that Bregman is willing to be approached by the Red Sox. That did not stop him from being Jeff Passan's #1 trade deadline candidate. He placed the percentage chance of him being dealt at 10%. So in a way, it was kind of just a necessary acknowledgement that if the Red Sox are going to tread a little bit of water, maybe if he's got an opt-out at the end of the year, it makes sense. You could trade him and then reunite with him in the offseason too. Nothing preventing them from doing that. But we do seem aligned among the insiders that, hey, could happen, might explore it. Probably only about a 10% chance of that going down. Is that where you're at? I know you've expressed plenty of pessimism recently that they would even entertain it. Still low percentage chance he gets traded? And what about the percentage chance he just rips up the contract and signs a longer extension right now?
There's a lot to unpack here. And I agree with Jeff Passan that Bregman is like the #1 like possible guy that could get moved. That being said, do I think he gets moved? No. I expect the Red Sox to listen. That is what every team in baseball does on so many of their players. I would say about 99% of players get listened on at the deadline. And you would not believe the conversations that are had or the players that are checked in on at the deadline just to see if they're available. It's teams doing due diligence. It's how you operate. And that's how a guy like Rafael Devers gets moved. And if teams see Devers get moved as early as he did, why should they believe that Bregman or anybody else should end up being untouchable around the league? So I totally understand why teams would check in on a guy like Bregman. But that being said, with the Red Sox moving Devers, Bregman is the number one candidate to fill that role this year and possibly long term. So I would be really surprised if the Red Sox ultimately move Bregman unless they're blown away with an offer, and that is why you listen. As far as the contract situation goes with Bregman, he is represented by Scott Boras, and Boras really prefers his players to establish their value on the open market. And Bregman, in my eyes, is not necessarily in a situation where he should do a long-term contract right now. He's been hurt for a while. Obviously, like, he's tremendously talented. He's one of the better infielders in baseball when he is healthy. But that injury really just makes it difficult. And I can't imagine Boras is going to be in a hurry to do an extension now. Obviously, he'll listen. He'll see what's out there, but I would be flat out really surprised if he did an extension now. So my guess, how this all plays out, is Bregman does not get moved. He remains in Boston for this year, probably opts out at the end of the year, and then who knows there. But Bregman and Boras are going to be in a position of leverage come the offseason because, I mean, after moving Devers, I mean, it makes plenty of sense to keep him long term or just spend a lot of money because they saved a lot of money by moving Devers.
I see a comment saying that he was not the number one power ranking. He was the number one alphabetical ranking. And the note in Passan's column is players are ranked by value for their new team if traded, not likelihood of being dealt. So obviously he's saying if Bregman is traded, he's the most impactful player that could move at the deadline, but the chances of him moving are limited. It also was hilarious to see him say the best fits were the teams that were also in the Bregman sweepstakes this winter because duh. I mean, not much has changed for any of those teams. The Cubs, Tigers, Yankees, and Mets. Yeah, they kind of all used Alex Bregman in February, but they decided not to. Now he will make his way back. For the Red Sox, we will see if they can fight it out in the wild card race. They went from holding on to a spot. 4-game losing streak has now left them 2.5 out and 4 games out in the loss column, the all-important loss column. Does that mean anything? No, but it shows you how much things can change in a week. And it shows you why this is such an impossible trade deadline because the Red Sox went from occupying a playoff spot to behind 4 or 5 teams, and they could be occupying a playoff spot again next week if they go 6-1. Which leads us into the number 2 player on the list, someone who has been seen on this podcast at least is much more available, and that's Jiren Duran. And the secret below the surface with Jiren Duran is that he has not been that megastar level player since he won the All-Star MVP last summer. He's in fact been a below average offensive player since then by a small margin. But again, they're probably going to be selling him as a superstar or at least a centerpiece star. And he hasn't quite been that since we all saw him on the national stage last year. The best fits in Passan's column almost goes without saying, San Diego, but then Atlanta, Cleveland, Kansas City, and the percentage chance of trade there at 25%. You and I have made it pretty clear that San Diego and the Red Sox match up nicely on a Duran trade. Do you still have your eyes open for something like that?
I do. I'm still skeptical that the Padres will end up being the team that acquires Duran because getting him is going to be expensive, even though he has not had the year that he had last year, and he hasn't really carried that momentum into this year that he had last year. So I think the Padres will explore it, and if they can make it happen, for sure. But what the Padres, their roster is tremendously talented. But that being said, there are holes on that roster. And if you get Duran and pay the price to get him, I don't necessarily know how much more room you have to upgrade other areas of the roster. So I think Preller and that front office have to keep that in mind. So as of this point, I just don't think that's going to be in the fit for Duran. But a controllable outfielder in Atlanta makes plenty of sense. So I think that's a really strong connection there by Passan. There's a mosquito in my apartment, and it is buzzing by me. I've gotten bit by it 3 times already, so that's not great. So my apologies. I'm swatting this thing away as I'm trying to discuss the Jiren Duran stuff. But I do think when you compare Duran to a guy like Bregman, I would say Duran is more likely to go. I would say it makes a lot more sense for the Red Sox to do it, considering their outfield logjam and just overall state of the roster. So I expect there to be plenty of conversations about Duran. That's a guy that I believe has a real shot of going somewhere. And if they can end up moving him and improving a different part of the roster, and that sets them up to compete next year and going forward, I think that's something that they absolutely should do. Is the mosquito my source? Yes, that is how I found out about the Devers trade. So, yeah, the mosquito is how that happened.
Yeah, you know how people always say a little birdie told me? It's the littlest birdie. It's a tiny mosquito. That's actually what people mean when they say that. The comments noting that, hey, I mean, again, we're reminding Padres fans that they're always going to get creative. The comments asking if they could maybe do a buy and sell off an expiring asset, and then use the prices to get a piece that also helps them this year and beyond. I mean, yeah, again, Preller's up against it, but it does feel like if there's any team that's going to pull off something creative and some sort of hybrid maneuver, it's probably going to be the Padres or a team like the Red Sox that knows we can compete in this thing this year, but we're also extremely well set up to compete for the next 5 years.
Yeah, and I think it's a great shot by you with the Padres because they are led by AJ Preller, who the conversations that he has around the league and just even inside his front office, I don't know if there's another like executive like him in baseball. He explores everything. He is absolutely relentless. And if he's got an opportunity to make a big move, he should go out and do it. And I've seen people even as recent as yesterday say that he should sell or that they should consider selling. I just cannot see any world where he ends up selling. I mean, maybe if someone ends up I can't imagine he ends up leaving the deadline worse on the roster than he is as of this point. I think he firmly tries to go out and upgrade. So we'll see ultimately what he does. He is known for the big move, and rightfully so. And I've used this comparison a lot, and I'm really curious to see if he's actually even talked to him before. But he reminds me a lot of Howie Roseman in football. And I mean, as everyone knows here, or most of you know, I should say, I'm a diehard Eagles fan, and I hold Howie Roseman in the highest regard. So the fact that I use that comparison for Preller says how much I respect the guy, because he is there. There's no executive like him in baseball, like I said.
I'm a diehard Giants fan, and I also hold him in high regard, though I got to shout him out for the Saquon Barkley Madden cover curse. So good job there, loser organization making bad decisions. No, they're going to go 14-3 again this year. Probably win the Super Bowl.
God, I hope so.
That's kind of their thing. Well, the comment's very appropriate, asking about the Cubs-Marlins connection for Sandy Alcantara, because I did want to talk about Alcantara next, because, again, I'm just scrolling down the list of candidates, seeing what stands out to me. Obviously, you know, this list goes 50 deep and 30 to 50. We're not making connections between teams, and some of these are just, hey, that player's a fit for that team, but some of it is more than educated guesswork. And Alcantara with a 60% trade likelihood, according to Passan, opened up my eyeballs a little bit, because we've watched him struggle this year. He entered the season as arguably the top projected trade deadline candidate, just the most impactful mover. Everyone's had their eyes on him for 1.5 to 2 years while he rehabbed. But the struggles and the surface level numbers make you think, the Marlins going to hold him until they can really get a haul. Our team's going to buy into current Alcantara versus Cy Young winning Alcantara. But 60% trade likelihood, and the best fits being the Cubs listed first, followed by the Astros and Red Sox. A little bit of eyeball emoji action there. So do you agree with the percentage likelihood he has moved, and what does the package look like at this point?
If you would have asked me that question 3 weeks ago, and I'm pretty sure you did, my answer was that it was unlikely that he was going to be moved. And at that time, I firmly believed it, because he was struggling. He looked very little like the pitcher that he did pre-Tommy John surgery. But since then, he's put together some really intriguing starts, and he's shown glimpses of being that pitcher that he once was. And that has increased the chances of a trade, because the Marlins were not going to sell low on him. Like, that was just not something that they were eager to do, that they wanted to do. Because a pitcher of that caliber, I mean, if he was available and pitching right, we're talking probably top 5 pitcher in ball. Like, he's that good. So I expect there to be a huge market for a guy like Alcantara. And the team that I think makes the most sense is the Chicago Cubs. And if you look back in the offseason, the Cubs and Marlins had pretty extensive talks about a Jesus Luzardo trade. And I believe Ken Rosenthal even reported at one point that the sides had agreed to terms. but there was a medical thing that held up the deal. And I had heard something similar at the time, but I couldn't necessarily confirm it. But those two sides have deep familiarity with each other. Clearly, the Marlins like prospects in the Cubs' system. So we'll see if they are able to get a deal done there. But I do know the Cubs have been very active on the pitching market front, and I would expect them to absolutely leave the deadline with a pitcher. And based on some reports from Bruce Levine and some others there in Chicago, maybe it happens sooner rather than later. So we'll see. But the Cubs have been one of the more active teams so far.
Now, if you've watched this podcast recently, you know that it seems like Passan's thought process and Roberts are definitely aligned in certain regards. One of them being on Ryan O'Hearn, who we singled out as a likely mover last show. The Orioles are still sort of stuck in neutral here, playing closer to 500 ball lately, but they needed to play 700 ball. So here we are where they have to entertain selling off expiring assets. Passan had O'Hearn at an 85% chance of moving, and the Mariners as the best fit. Although, of course, the first base needy Red Sox also there. They're also there on Naylor. They're on all the first base options. O'Hearn and the Mariners. If you gave me, I don't know what truth serum, like I don't know why you would do that, but if you wanted to sit me down and torture me ahead of the trade deadline, I feel like I would say that's the most likely connection between two sides. So you made your thoughts clear that O'Hearn is probably on the move. What do you think about that potential fit?
I think it's a really strong potential fit, and the Mariners could absolutely still use an offensive boost. And I'm still skeptical about how sustainable their first half offense is, although that being said, Cal Raleigh has been phenomenal there, and his MVP candidacy is seemingly growing by the day, because we talked about it Monday, and I've since seen Ken Rosenthal, Jeff Passan, and some others discuss it since then. So
Aaron Judge came up with the bases loaded and a chance to put a hurt on the Reds yesterday in extra innings. Mr. Pop Out. I mean, Cal Raleigh wouldn't have done that.
No, I'm not going there. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, not me. Mm-hmm. We're talking Ryan O'Hearn. I got sidetracked for a second. But he absolutely makes a lot of sense for the Mariners, will give them a huge boost. But there's going to be plenty of competition for his services as well. And a team that would make sense to me, I could see the Giants being involved. They make some sense there. And I expect them to add an infielder between now and the deadline. So I think that would make some sense. What Passan mentioned, Boston as well. So I don't know if they trade him within the division, but we'll see there. But I would be really surprised if he is not on the move, and he'll be one of the more impactful guys that's moved at the deadline, because what he's done since going to Baltimore and what he's done this season is remarkable. And that was a great move by Baltimore, getting him for cash considerations when they did a couple of years ago, and they're going to be able to cash in there. They're not going to get like a massive haul by any means, but it's going to be much more than what they end up giving up to get him. So good job by that front office, and it's not very often we can say that about them.
Definitely going to get to some of your questions in a bit. I am certainly watching. Just a couple more things I want to touch on. And one just is like the total irony that going through Passan's list, he basically connected the Dodgers to every top potentially available closer, from Emmanuel Clase to Felix Bautista, Jarren Duran and Ryan Helsley, obviously, who, again, how this changes from the offseason to the regular season. I think all of us thought Helsley would be a top 5. Obviously, he's leaving prize of the deadline. And now, like the comments are mentioning, what are the Cardinals? They alternate hot streaks with cold streaks, but that has left them right in the middle of the NL Central, let alone the wild card. They're torturing the Cubs this week. Seems like they're built to torture the Cubs, like the Red Sox are to torture the Yankees, and here they go. So Helsley is not someone he's like in Passan's top 30. I'm barely even thinking about him moving at this point. But after the offseason the Dodgers had, where they bring in Yates and Scott, and you go, okay, so they have 9 closers. Got it. What's the point? They're breaking baseball. They were connected to every available closer at the deadline, and they should be. They need that. So is it fair to assume that's a direction that the Dodgers are going to be willing to go? And I didn't forget Alexis Diaz in the minor league system for the Dodgers either. They're trying.
No, they absolutely are, and they are. They're absolutely going to be in the bullpen market. And as you said, like if you end up saying that in the offseason that they'd be looking for bullpen help at the deadline, I would have told you you're pretty crazy about that. But considering the situation there and just the number of injuries that they've had, it's a position that they can't really ignore at this point. So I would expect them to target that. And we'll see what else Andrew Friedman ends up targeting there. Maybe even looks at a starting pitcher. Who knows? But that is a team that you can never sleep on at the deadline. We saw them go out and get Jack Flaherty last year for what seemed like pennies on the dollar.
Mhm.
What was it? I think they ended up giving up Trey Sweeney and there's another one. Starts with
Lorenzo.
Lorenzo. Yeah. So I think that's absolutely they're a team to watch, but bullpen is going to be the specific area to watch with them.
Yeah, and speaking of their NL West cohorts, we'll talk about the Diamondbacks on every show pre-trade deadline, presumably. But between last show and this one, Corbin Carroll hit the IL. They are banged up. They remain banged up. They remain stuck in the middle. This isn't going to push them definitively in one direction. They are too good to decide they are sellers on June 25th or 24th or 23rd, I assume. But with every passing day, there's another glancing blow to the Diamondbacks. It just makes you think at some point they're going to have to face the music and sell off a few of the assets who are going to walk in the offseason, unless they want to extend to Eugenio Suarez. I don't know how you don't trade him this summer.
I am right there with you on this. If I'm the Diamondbacks, I consider selling, or I strongly consider selling, because you have Suarez, you have all these pitchers like Zach Gallen, Merrill Kelly, Shelby Miller, who's been resurgent this year. Like, there's so many different guys that they can move and end up like better setting themselves up for the future. And yet, to this point, despite their poor performance on the field and all the injuries, the front office continues to signal that they still want to buy, that they still want to compete. And I don't blame them for doing so. I think you got to send a message to your club like, hey, like, we're still in this, like, we're not giving up yet. Because if you say, yeah, we're going to sell, then the clubhouse is going to see that, and that could just lead to struggles and just overall bad vibes. So I don't blame Mike Hazen for saying that, but I think the clear direction for that franchise right now is to sell, because I mentioned the pitching guys, but Suarez and just Josh Naylor, all these guys on offense, there are so many pieces here. And we only have like 5 or 6 true sellers at this point. And there's no real star players that are probably going to get moved among those teams. Maybe one, I don't know. But the Diamondbacks getting involved can change a lot. You can end up getting just a tremendous amount of value overall. And we even saw what Mike Hazen told ESPN the other night. Like, the Sharks are already swarming. So if they do decide to sell, teams are going to be ready, and they're going to be coming with big offers.
Do you have any expectations for the Cardinals? I mean, the Cardinals and the Reds. The Reds are getting the love from Jeff Passan today, specifically. I think when you have Chase Burns come in and smooth out the Yankees on the national stage, then maybe that allows that. Maybe people start waking up to, oh wow, there's a core. What the hell, pretty cool. But the Cardinals and Reds and Brewers are all teams that have been discussed as like, well, it's good, solid clubs, probably won't catch the Cubs, time to entertain some sort of a sell-off. Now the Cubs are within range, within the sights of at least 2 of those 3 teams, and the Reds are making real wild card noise. So does the entire NL Central non-Pirates division have to go in on buying this summer? I mean, they are fascinating at this point. And we all thought the AL Central was maybe the more fascinating division. But at this point, all of those teams are slumbering a bit, and the NL Central is coming to play.
No, you're dead on about that. I mean, as always, the Cubs.
Sometimes I'm wrong. I mean, OKC is probably a dynasty, but usually
I think that's gonna be a consistent bit on the show. It cracks me always. Yeah, MLB Deadline News, way to poke the bear. Yeah, good job by you. But let's start off with the Cubs. Like as we said before, they're going to be looking at starting pitching. They're going to be looking at bullpen help. So they are in a clear position to buy. The Brewers are in a really kind of interesting spot as well, and I would expect them to target offense just to bolster that lineup even more. I know it's been picked up of late, especially that series against the Twins, but just further adding to the offense there makes plenty of sense there. The Reds, there's a lot of reasons to be high on them, and you were high on them coming into the season, especially with getting Terry Francona.
Yeah.
And so far, it started off a little slow, but we're starting to see the reasons why you were so high on them. But the team that is a real fascinating one here, and I'm glad that I think it was Jake Wood who mentioned it, is the St. Louis Cardinals. And they are going to have new leadership at the end of the year. They are a team that nobody really expected to contend this year. And I was kind of the thinking that this would probably be Ali Marmol's last season there. But he's done a tremendous job in navigating this difficult situation where, they tried to trade Nolan Arenado in the offseason where it was priority 1, 2, and 3, and they did not move him. Chaim Bloom is going to take over for Mozeliak at the end of the year. There's a lot of different things that were just changing or just going on with that organization, but he's done a great job in navigating it. So good job by him. But if I'm that team, or if I'm running that franchise at this deadline, I am not doing anything significant because you don't want to end up impacting the future there. And I get maybe why Mozeliak would want to do that, considering this will be his last year. But I think they got to be smart and be realistic that they're not going to be a World Series team this year. Maybe just like hold steady. I don't think that would be a bad move by any means, but I don't expect them to go crazy at the deadline.
Thank you for the questions, of course, and more insight to come as the deadline gets even closer. We'll take more questions if you got them, but now I think is the time to yell and scream about that White Sox fan a little bit, who word has come down, has been banned from the ballpark, has been banned from all ballparks, rightly so, after the garbage that made Ketel Marte cry on the field last night. And I just wanted to pull in, too, that Dennis Santana, who took a swing at a fan in the Tigers, above the Tigers bullpen, thankfully not in the Tigers bullpen, said that fan also brought up his deceased relative in terms of this heckling. I don't know where this started. I don't know when this started. I don't give a shit. Stop doing it.
Yeah, no, it's a low blow. It's not a cool move at all. And anyone who makes comments like that, like to the guys that, or to the people that said it to Dennis Santana and then to Ketel Marte, they rightfully are getting banned. No, I saw that clip before there was context about Ketel Marte, and I was really kind of caught off guard by it. And then the context came out, and I hope the guys, like in both cases, I hope both of them, their names leak. So the family of theirs or the friends around them and just people in general can know what kind of sleazeballs those guys are. So no, remember, these guys are people and they're just like us. They have feelings too. They have families, they have friends. So anyone making jokes or bringing up dead relatives or dead parents, there's a special place in hell for you is all I got to say.
Yeah, I mean that Steve Kerr, when he was a player at Arizona, got taunted by the crowd over the death of his father at the hands of Islamic jihadists. And that was pulled up as a moment of like the most disgusting that a coordinated fan base has ever been, right? We'll never do that again. Like it's an example of like, wow, that toxicity must be reversed. And now people just do that every night. People go to the stadium and directly target players and bring up their deceased relatives over. Not only is it a sporting event, it's a regular season sporting event in the middle of June. It's horrible. And now I think that the positive message at least is they will find you. Like they know who you are. They know they can see you. They know who bought the tickets. You're not going to get away with this. And this man has been identified, banned, banned from all ballparks. And so try it. Like, I dare you. You want to try that? All right. They're going to find you. So hopefully that helps.
No, I'm hoping that people, like, as I said, I hope their names leak. I really do. Because it's not often I wish ill will on people, but that's just a line you can't cross. So I agree with everything you said, Adam. You said that better than I could. So good work by you.
Well, and just, hey, don't give them, like, if they get banned and they get sad about it, don't give them a puff piece either. Like all those stories about the guys who try to grab Mookie Betts' wrists. And then you got like a full profile of like, hey, I just like grabbing wrists over here. And then you had like people on both sides of the aisle being like, maybe they're misunderstood. No, they're not misunderstood. They're just guys who suck. So we don't have to give them attention if we don't want to. But yeah, leak the names. I don't mind the names leaking. This person, if we have to know Steve Bartman, like, well, we should know these guys too. We should know the researchers of dead relatives.
Yeah, spot on. No, I'm 100% in agreement with you on there, and I'm glad everyone else is in the comments as well.
Yeah, shout out to the comments. We love our commenters. We always do, and we knew y'all would be on the right side of history. Some of you are Red Sox fans, but that's okay at the end of the day. I do want to touch on, but right before we sign off, we've gotten so many questions about the Rangers. I think we need to drill down on them a little bit because, they are in the same boat. They're right in that area of the wild card race where it's like just a tick behind the Red Sox. You've got like the Rangers, Royals, Angels. Honestly, don't forget the Angels. who got 2 dingers from Christian Moore last night, walked off the Sox. But is anyone taking the Angels seriously? Is anyone taking the Rangers seriously right now? Should we be? Are we making a mistake not doing that? It feels like the Rangers and Angels are similarly caught in between, but everyone's saying the Angels should sell and the Rangers should buy. Where are you at on both those teams?
I think the Angels should absolutely sell. They should not convince themselves that they can compete in the American League, because we've seen it happen before where they've been on the borderline here of contending and selling, and yet they've bought and then sold off like 2 weeks later. So that's just a mistake waiting to happen for them. So I think they need to be realistic about where they're at and sell. As far as the Rangers go, I'm going to give you the same answer that I give. I think it's Mason Hovind in the Discord, because he every week during the Q&A, he ends up asking me what's going on with the Rangers and what's their plans at the deadline. And I always give him the same answer, and I'll give him the same answer tomorrow when he asks me. We got to wait and see, because there's no real clear idea of what they're going to do. And it's probably going to end up coming down to the very end there. So I don't have anything new to report on the Rangers.
Yeah, they are firmly stuck in the middle. And like the Uncle Ted in the comments said, as Corey Seager goes, they go. Far too many of these teams are sort of one superstar driven. Definitely not talking about the team in pinstripes either. But some folks need to find some balance, and the Rangers are firmly stuck in that middle ground. We're going to have to find out. There might be a fruitful path ahead for them if they do want to be sellers. We appreciate everybody joining us today, and again tomorrow in the Q&A with Robert in the Discord at 3 o'clock Eastern time. So if you're not joined up, if you are not either an all-star, you get priority in this chat with your questions, or in the rumor mill tier, which is where the Q&A takes place. We recommend you join up with us, do that, get in ahead of the trade deadline. Going to be a big July, fun as always, and then you're in there for the fallout in August, the stretch run, and the postseason, and the offseason and winter meetings. It does not get more fun than the winter meetings. So we'll be here. Will you be? Subscribe to the Moonshot. Join us on the Baseball Insiders feed on fansided.com. That's fansided.com/baseball-insiders. Robert, anything else you wanted to touch on before we signed up?
I'm gonna go after somebody here real quick. It is Sean Gardner here. He said that as a Commanders fan, or as an Eagles fan, I should be worried about the Commanders. I am not worried about the Commanders at all. I think the Eagles win that division pretty easily. You should go read Jimmy Kempski's piece today about why the Commanders are going to be a dumpster fire, because that will get you through the day. So go Birds. And no, the Commanders are not going to win the NFC East.
Well, New York Giants, watch out. I mean, worst roster in the division and hardest schedule. So fingers crossed. Those two things usually line up well. If you're in last place, shouldn't you play bad teams? That's just one of my, hey, maybe that's just me. You should maybe have an easier path if you suck. But apparently,
too logical.
No, apparently that's not how we do it in the NFL. We're throwing the Giants are going to Kansas City, going to the scariest places in the league. So yeah, they'll be 3-14 again, but maybe Abdul Carter will put up some numbers. If you have football thoughts, dynasty basketball thoughts, or baseball rumors, also if that's something you want to talk about, come join us in the Discord. Come join us again next Monday afternoon at 3:30 Eastern for our next stream here on the Baseball Insiders channel. Shit's definitely fired. You're 100% right. Undeniably true. Sorry to put you on blast there. But if you come Monday at 3:30, more shits will be fired here on the Baseball Insiders live stream. Robert, another good show.
Another good show. I appreciate everyone who tuned in. I appreciate RG for the typo there, because that made me chuckle pretty good. But Adam, I appreciate you. Adam, our also lovely producer for the day. I appreciate you even more. And see you back here. What was that, Monday?
Yeah, let's do a Monday show. How about it?
All right, let's make it happen. That sounds good to me.
All right. Hey, yo, see you on Monday show, everybody. All right.
All right, thank you.